Okay.
Okay.
So here we have today on Arash's World, we have Keru Pepritz. Is that right? Yeah.
Yes.
And he is what I like to refer him as an educational thought leader, but he's many other things as well. He's a published author, award-winning author, and he is interested in philosophy as well, which he found out to his surprise. But it's something that Rash's World is also all about, which we call it philosophy with a twist. And I'm sure from what I've read about Keru, he has many twists in his life too, and we can maybe touch upon that as well. But our main focus is going to be on COVID and schools. But first of all, welcome here to Rash's World, Keru. And
Thank you,
so
Rash.
glad to have, I'm so glad
Pleasure
to
to
have
be
you.
here. Yes, a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Great. As we know, COVID has disrupted many of our lives, and it has affected us in oh so many ways. But as a parent, and I'm a parent myself, it is a very difficult decision now. We have to balance with our child's needs and education as well as their safety. Schools are in BC. They have recently decided to open schools and in a mandatory way that our kids have to go back. And in the United States, there are, again, I think it depends state by state as
Yes.
well. Yeah.
State by state and locality by locality.
And so what is the current condition in the United States and your experience, Kara, if you can talk a little bit about that?
It's such a mixed bag of what's going on. We have, no national mandate, of course. Even the state mandates, a lot of this has just been passed on down from the president to the governors, on down to the local school districts, with not much direction. And I think what the most difficult part for many parents is that as much as teachers are trying to figure it out as they go along in their particular school districts, there's this want for normalcy that is so overwhelming that they're trying to bluff the virus and say, oh, well, maybe we can wait 2 more days or 2 more weeks or 1 more week. It's crazy. And I almost think, guys, take a break. Let's just push it out to the end of first quarter, October or so that teachers can get a bit of breathing room and put it online. And then you guys can figure out how to, if you want to, or if you can figure out how to bring it back in, to do so. But other than that, it's just a patchwork of non-leadership and decision-making.
And I think decision-making is something that's very important here, because it's like the decision, yes, the school is making a decision, the government is making a decision, and as parents, we should have the right to make a decision as well. I mean, this is, as I read, and absolutely I agree with you, children are our lives, they're not businesses. And so one of my concerns is that there is this push of children going back to school for reasons of business. So parents who want to work, they can, and so they can leave their kids at school. Now, that in some cases, if you are willing to take the risk as a parent and exposing your child to those conditions, that should be okay if you choose to do so, but you should also have the choice of having online classes or courses. So if you say, I'd rather have my son stay at home and do work from his home, in the safety of his home, that should be an option too. Now, you guys have the option. It is, you can choose between an online.
Yes, now in our particular area, it's interesting because you can have the option passed to allow your child. This is my son's going into high school. They said you can opt in for the full year on digital, or you will start digital and go hybrid. Now, it's really interesting that you're telling me that it's mandated that they go back to school. Now, that's the first time I've heard that. I just think that's, I think the option should be there at this point. I mean, I find that very disconcerting.
And I think part of the of not giving an option is because there are a lot of teachers who are reluctant to embrace this new technology, and I think that's something that needs to change. I mean, what COVID is highlighting is we have to change our lifestyle in many ways, and it's for me, I see it also as a wake-up call in terms of hygiene. My wife is a nurse, and she is pleased that in restaurants, when you go to a restaurant, they're disinfecting tables and everything. But she said that should be the norm. She's shocked to know that that was not the norm before when we would go and have dinner. And so it is something like it's kind of a new way, a new culture that is emerging of being safe, of being healthy, right, and healthier as well. And so I think that's the good thing that's coming out of this. But at the same time, it's hard for everybody. And I accept that it's hard for the leaders, it's hard for the government, it's hard for the schools, but they have to also appreciate that it's hard for us. And it's decisions are hard to make because this virus is so unpredictable.
Yeah.
Right. So, what should guide us in these decisions? What do you think we should listen to, or who should we follow?
Who should we follow? Well, I think first and foremost, I think we can both agree upon this. It's the health officials, um, I mean, bar none. If you look at New Zealand, you look at Germany, you look at all the countries around the world that are keeping it down, and they're saying yes, you can return because our RO rate, our RO rate is down so low, the infection rate, that we can make this happen if we use all the appropriate measures. The United States is not in that position, even state by state. So I think once again, this is a case of Russian roulette, and I think you'd have greater odds playing Russian roulette than you would having your kid, especially in our neck of the woods, get COVID. I mean, it's 1 out of every 12 people that are getting tested test positive in Arizona. So that's a pretty high rate. I it is it is a basket full of impossibles at the moment. And as you were just saying before, the other side of it is the business part. I mean, parents need to get back to work. It's just critical to do that. So, but on the other hand, are we going to put our child's life at stake? Yes, we know that from 10 and under, that they don't get sick very often, but who wants to be the one parent, the parents that whose child gets sick and or dies? That would be horrific. So I think we're dealing with so many impossibilities right at the moment. And also the asymptomatic part of your child going into school, they get it, they bring it home, and all of a sudden we're back to square one in terms of how we infect the community. So.
And part of the problem is with health officials is because this virus is so unpredictable. We've never had anything like this before. And so they have to change their stories. They have to change the findings that they have, the new findings. And now at the beginning it was, yeah, you don't have to worry. You won't get it. You won't get sick. You won't die if you're in the younger bracket range, or if you don't have any underlying health conditions. And that's been changing. And so now here, especially in our province in BC, we have younger people who are getting infected with this disease. And so we don't know where it's going to head us, where it's going to head and where it's going to take us. And so the idea of children are immune is a false narrative, I think, because first of all, they do get sick, and some of them can be grave. It's rare, but it can happen. And the other thing is they can pass it on easily to us, right? So we have here in Canada, we don't have mandatory masks. It's not mandatory to wear masks at school, which I don't understand, because it is the focal point of infection. You're in an enclosed space, you have lots of kids together, and it's just dangerous. That's where the virus would breed. And so And also the flip-flopping, and that is here and as well in the US about masks. They say, yes, masks don't protect you, or masks will protect you, and you should wear it, you should not wear it. And so that turning it into a debate as well, I think that's something quite dangerous.
I agree. I'm surprised to hear that in Canada, been going on also. I mean, this debate thing about the masks is a debate to me that's been over. We're done with it. At the same time, you saw in Georgia, they opened up the high school there, and all of a sudden, the majority of kids are not wearing masks, and immediately the school closes down. Same thing in Illinois, same thing in Florida. It's like, guys, this is a respiratory disease. As they're finding out, it's not so much the surfaces, it's the what's coming out of your lungs. So why wouldn't you do the simplest thing possible? And especially, I'll tell you, if parents are so desperate to get their kids back to school, what a great motivation. It's like, here it is, wear a mask and your kid can go to school. Wow, what a great motivator. I think people would say, politics, screw that. I want my kids so badly back in school that I'll wear a mask.
Well, in their defense, they said it's optional, but I mean, we know kids, and it's I tell my son it's optional to do this reading. He won't do it, and it's when you make it optional, is those who are wearing it are going to be bullied by those who are not, So it's something. There should be a clear there should be a clear line and say clear communication. This is mandatory. This is for our safety. And if you don't agree with it, don't come or don't send your kid to school.
Yeah. Rush, isn't it interesting? It almost sets up a mask caste system, doesn't it? For those kids that are going to school, I mean, you're right. They're the ones like, oh, you're the ones that don't wear a mask, or vice versa. I mean, I think it should just be, yeah, you're right. People will say, you got to wear a mask, end of story, and especially with kids. Let
What
alone
about, yeah, and what about the mental and emotional well-being of kids? Now they say, and this is the story we're told, a narrative as well, that if they stay home and they're missing out on school and having time with their friends, socializing and so on, they will suffer from this, which is true. I mean, which is valid. But what about sending them to a school environment that is completely different from what they had previously experienced? So, I mean, there's this little social distancing. You can't maybe talk to your friend. You can't, you're not free to move about as you were uh, allowed to previously. So, does that not create an emotional toll on the children when they see everything is different?
you know, did you ever see the movie Life is Beautiful?
Yeah, I love that movie.
I love that movie. And it just goes to the heart of and for your viewers out there, if they don't remember, this took place in Italy. It was a Italian foreign language film. And the little boy and his father end up in a Italian concentration camp. And the father makes it like a game.
Mhm.
And so the boy doesn't even know he's in a concentration camp. And I almost think it's the same sort of attitude with adults. Like I really try to tell my son, I say, hey, we got to roll with the punches here. I mean, we've got a vaccine coming down the line. We can make it this far. However we do this, this is going to be this state of affairs for this amount of time. And guess what? Sometime next year, we're going to be in a whole new deal altogether. That's what I believe. That's the positive part of me looking down the road.
I completely agree with you. I believe in
Yeah,
that
I
as
think
well.
so.
Yeah.
I really do. And kids, sometimes I don't think we give them enough credit for how well they respond to environments, especially if they're getting cues, they're getting good modeling like, well, I guess we just got to muddle through this and figure out a way to do it, as knuckleheaded as it may seem. And they go, oh, okay, well, this is what it is, and you make a game of it or whatnot. I do think there's an interesting thought that it's been percolating in my mind recently after a number of interviews, and that is schools are very much, well, now you have to do this by this time, so you're not counted as absent and all these things. And I'm going, whoa, I think schools, you need to cut some slack here.
Absolutely.
The big slack, maybe even in the grading. I'm not even sure. I'm a person that raises the bar high, But I am seeing so much discombobulation going on, especially with the kids not knowing what's going on, saying, hey, schools, lower it down until you get it figured out, until it rolls nicely. Maybe you say, hey, by end of first quarter, we're going to start being much more rigorous about this, but right now we're going to have to keep you, we can allow a little bit of slack.
I completely agree with you, and I think the school administrators are not completely aware of the situation. Sometimes it's like I've read a lot of articles about, so how are we going to test, how are we going to assess, and the kids and university students as well. This is a big issue here as well. But I'm thinking, well, let's just like think about the situation. Let's think clearly. This is a pandemic that happens every 100 years currently, so we're in an exceptional situation. Now we have to adapt, we have to adjust, we have to modify things. And the most important thing is really have empathy and compassion for those kids, for those students who are in a situation they've never experienced before. Neither have we, right? So by being like, okay, no, this is how we do it, and we're not going to fluctuate or change anything, it seems to be it is very narrow-minded in my view.
I think so.
And
At this
it's not
time.
looking at the situation in a productive way.
Yeah. One of my daughters recently told me, she said, she's got 4 kids, 7, 5, 4, and 2 or 3. And so they're kindergarten, first grade, one of them kindergarten. And it was funny because you turn on the screen and he's looking at himself, and the teacher's waving like this. He's making faces at himself and all this. And it's like, nope, I'm done. And I'm going, oh man, I'm glad I'm not at that point. But look at what parents have to do. They have to become these babysitters and teachers that they had never imagined. I'm sure they're just as frustrated. So there's this whole, you're right. Everyone needs to just take a breath and just get through this. And we're going to do it, but we got to cut some slack, guys. This is, kids, the kindergartners poking at masks, doing all this if they have to go back to school or online, and it just doesn't work.
Mm-hmm. And it's something we have to remind ourselves. Things will get better. This is not going to stay like this forever. And it's not very comforting to hear health officials, some of them, saying that, no, this might be the new normal forever. That's not true. And I firmly believe that we will have a vaccine and people will take it and things will change. We'll go back to normal the way we knew it. But in the meantime, we have to hang in there. And so one thing that's happening is referred to as pandemic fatigue, which we see with younger people, but also generally people just say, no, I don't want to continue like this. So what would you say to those people?
No, you tell me what you would say to those people.
I would just say, hang in there.
Hang in there.
Grow up.
Oh, yeah, all those things. I think as it relates to students, one of the things I used to talk about were what I call school year resolutions. For those families that are going to be starting here in about 3 weeks, as Arizona is already starting, but we had this discussion. We sat down with our son the other day and said, hey, we know it's different, but it's the same time, it is school. What type of things do you need to accomplish this year that are different from last year? And here are maybe some of our expectations, and have that conversation. So that's important to sort of say, hey, we're resetting. Yeah, we've been in this mode with lockdowns and all these things, but now it's school and we have to treat it like school. And with that being said too, and I would really recommend this to parents, is you start the school day like you're going to work. You get up, you have a breakfast. No one gets to be in their PJs and hanging out. It's not going to be, especially the older you are, I think you need to have much more responsibility in that realm, but you need to you put on your school clothes. Like I said, you don't have your PJs on below. You treat it like you turn your bedroom into a schoolroom for 8 hours or 6 hours or whatever it is. After that, that's fine. But I think it provides some continuity that everybody needs. Parents need, kids need to know that we're shifting. And that shift actually feels sort of good. Like, all right, pandemic mode, now we're in a different mode and we're going to deal with that. It gives us a sense of turning.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that kind of ritual routine that you're talking about, I think it's very important too.
Yeah, I agree.
We do that now constantly when we go out. We always wear masks just for safety, the whole family. And we don't have to even think about it. This is something we do automatically. It's like, okay, where's my mask? You know, let's put on my hat. It's like it becomes part of the process. And once you do it, and I see people complaining, it's like, I can't breathe under the mask, or it's uncomfortable, and I can't socialize with people, I can't talk to them. Yes, you can. It just, you need to get accustomed to it, adjust to it. And at first it's weird, at first it's uncomfortable, and I have apnea, so for me it's hard to breathe. But now I'm really good with it, and it's actually, I think I'll miss it at some point when I don't have to wear a mask. I'm like, what's
I was
going on?
wondering about that. I had thought about that too. I thought that was really interesting. You know, and it's so funny. It just, you brought a thought to mind that people say, well, how can you socialize? I go, you know what? Watch silent films and watch how they're always raising their eye. They have got exaggerated eye thing, you know, so sure, you can socialize.
Yeah, and I see people who just like pull down the mask so they're talking to you. It's like, well, what's the point of wearing it in the first place? You know, it's supposed to be up.
Do you know what? There's this sort of interesting thing that happens when you meet somebody, like if you're socially distant, you'll, for a moment, you'll like pull the mask off, here, not pull it, but you're like, here, this is who I am.
I've seen that too.
Is that, what a wild way to introduce oneself. But again, won't go on forever. It's part of an interesting time period. So, you know, at best, we should look at it as we're doing something fascinating right now. You know, we can get stuck in the mire thinking all the negative things, but boy, I think we've really got to put as much positive spin on this, knowing that, like you said, we're going to come out of this.
We're in a very good position. I mean, in terms of science, in terms of technology, if this had happened like 20 years ago, it would have been more devastating than now. And so I think we should be very hopeful and grateful that it's happening now in this time period, and just do our best, you know, whatever that entails. And it's not just about us. We really have to think of it as a community. We're all in this together as a world. And so it's just like, it's just so disappointing to see that there are people, like countries working on their own to find a vaccine instead of getting together. And let's pool resources, let's work together. It's not a race. This is not a Cold War who will get first to the moon and stuff. We're going to work with this. We're going to work together, and we're going to find a solution that will benefit everyone. And I just don't understand the mentality of division, and on either side. I'm not just taking any sides. I just think we have to come together. And if we can't come together during a pandemic, this doesn't speak too well about humanity, you know, where at the stage we're at right now.
Yeah, and I think the majority of people are definitely coming together. I think we're more similar than we're not, but it's always the dirty window syndrome, isn't it? Like 99% of a window can be clean, but that 1% is the one, like, God, there it is. I'm looking right at it. And that's what you're drawn towards. So as much as the people that aren't coming along for the ride or making a show of things, I definitely think the majority of people, I've read someplace like 80%, 85% of the Americans, you know, they are on board with having a mask. So
That's good news, yeah, because
it is good news. Yeah.
Here there is this movement, and there are demonstrations of anti-maskers, and so, but they're very small crowds. But I'm still like, it still worries me to see that people could think. I mean, it's not a question of freedom. I mean, wearing a mask is not only protecting yourself, but you're protecting others. And it's a necessity now, and it's a temporary necessity. It doesn't mean you'll be stuck with this forever. You know, so I don't understand the issue of freedom. Yes, you're free not to wear one, but please do it for compassion, you know, for thinking about not just yourself, but others. You know, and that is, I just don't understand the debate that is going on. Nobody's taking away your liberties. No.
Yeah, you're not, and freedom always has a particular responsibility to it, doesn't it? And I think that's the
responsibility.
Yeah, that people don't remember. It's funny when one of the letters in my book that it tells about when you turn 8, where it says, when you turn 18, don't read this. because gosh, you're 18 and you know the world and you know everything about it. And it's just one of those, sort of flips of psychology that says, you're not going to read. Now that I tell you, don't read this, you're
You're
going to
gonna
read
do
it.
it. Yeah.
So, but the basic premise is that now that you're 18, you feel like I can do anything in the world. But guess what? Now you're free to be taxed. Now you're free to go to be drafted. Now you're free to go to jail. Now, I mean, it's like, wow, all these things that you're free to be able to, yeah, you actually now you're responsible for your own freedoms.
Mm-hmm.
And that means those freedoms are integral to how you operate in society.
Absolutely. And I think complete freedom that people are envisioning perhaps is anarchy. Because, it's like I go outside, I'm wearing clothes. I prefer not to wear clothes, but I can't do it, right? So, and it's not, I don't feel that this is a restriction on my freedom. I was like, we want nudist, I don't see those kind of movements. So to me, the mass thing is something along the line that falls into that same way of thinking. This is
Isn't it that same thing that we're talking about, like with seatbelts? I mean, that's one of the classic things that came up. It's like, I remember my grandma saying, well, it would wrinkle my dress and we didn't have to wear it. And then one day I said, well, Grandma, what happens if we stopped and you went through the windshield? And she goes, well, I guess that's a good reason to wear a seatbelt. And then she wore her seatbelt after that, because out of the mouth of babes, like, Grandma, I don't want you going through the windshield. So, but that's what we do for each other, right? We do that to protect everyone else. I remember this great economics teacher I had. He was first a sociology teacher, became an econ teacher, and he goes, I want to take a vote in class. How many people do you think should be made to wear motorcycle helmets? And of course, we're all young and we're just filled up with, everyone should have the right to wear motorcycle helmets if they want to or not. And then he proceeded to break down the opportunity cost of what it meant to have that freedom. He says, well, that's great. So let's say this person gets into an accident and they have to be taken to a hospital and they don't have insurance because they wanted, I didn't have to wear a helmet. I don't have much money. This is the way it is. And then guess what? That cost goes on to the hospital. Who has to pay for it? The hospital does. Guess what? They're going to pass that cost down to you. So now you've paid for the right for this guy to have an accident, right? And I said, that's the cost of freedom.
Yes, that's a great example. Yes,
yeah.
And we don't realize it, but every action as an individual has an impact for the rest of us, for society, and to live together. I mean, if you want, then we can have people who would find their own island, and you can live any way you like in your own island. But as long as you're here in society, there are certain rules and obligations we have to follow. Traffic signs, they're there to control our traffic, and it doesn't impede your freedom. I want to drive when it's red. No, when it's red, you stop.
Yes. Right.
Accept those rules.
Yeah, or someone said, well, I can say anything I want anytime. Actually, you can't. You can't yell fire in a crowded theater.
Yes.
That's against the law. Well, why can't I? Well, because it creates it's a health issue. People will stampede on each other. So you're right. There's responsibilities that come with freedom.
Yeah.
It's part of the deal. Yeah. So it's fascinating. I think too, this sort of comes around to, I think one of the reasons that you have me on your show is to talk about testing.
Okay.
And this was the only reason I segue to that is talk about I think if everyone could get tested, they would. That would be part of the not the freedom not to, right? But I think this op-ed that I wrote, that frontline parents must demand testing for their kids before they go into school. And the reason is even though we've all given up as a nation, and I don't know about Canada too, but I don't know how much testing you got, but we've given up on it to the point that school administrators and people in our areas, they're not even asking that question whether we should test kids or not. And I was mortified to learn that. I also help out in the healthcare field. So I was
Cool.
helping one of our local schools talk about sterilization and sanitation protocols. And they were like, wow, that's interesting. We should do that. Well, yes, and this, that, and the other. And I said, okay, what about the virus? So you're testing for the virus? He says, shh, you're not supposed to bring that up. And I go, really? Why is that? Because we don't know what to do. It's just, that's right. So I wrote this op-ed because I felt as if parents, we have 76 million parents in the United States. I mean, parents, we have 76 million students. That's a lot of parent power.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that we should demand testing before any of our kids go back to school, because it makes zero sense, beyond zero sense, to send your kids. We have a clean slate and they're supposed to go back in and you don't know who's infected. That's nuts, beyond nuts. And then you got to keep testing them. And yes, it's an impossibility. It's an
Yeah.
absolute impossibility, but that's what you should be demanding.
Especially with this virus. I mean, you don't see the
Especially.
symptoms. I mean, if you have symptoms, okay, I have a cold, I'm going to stay in. Okay, that's great. But it doesn't work this way. And this makes it so challenging. And yes, I completely agree with you. This is why testing would be most important. Many people here have done tests and they found out later on, it's like, oh my God, I had it. I didn't even know I had this disease. So it's paramount to make sure that the slate is as clean as possible once you
As
start,
clean as possible.
and then
Yeah.
keep testing. I mean, that's the other thing. Is once you have the test, it doesn't mean it's not immunity. You couldn't get this disease later on, but at least we're starting well, you know. And I think
Yeah,
that.
at least, at a minimum, right?
Mhm.
And then some parents they'll come back and say, "Well, you can't test every day." And yep, you're right, we can't.
Mhm.
Even if we can test once a week or every couple weeks, and if we can get it back quickly, that's the point. Is not that we can't do it. The point is, as parents, we should demand that it be done. And that's the thing that I'm very adamant about, is that I will not accept the fact that this can't be done for either of our countries. I mean, I think this is like, are you kidding? This is a minimum of going back to school, a minimum, let alone wearing masks. You know, those two things alone should be that's the starting. That's how you enter school, with a COVID test and a mask on, and you probably cut down your rate of infection by 96, 97%.
Yes, absolutely. And then once you have the clean slate, just make sure you wear masks and everything is sanitized and so on. So you are really in a good position of not getting infected, or at least of reducing the rate of infection.
Yeah, and
And
to bring and to bringing it home, right? I mean, that's the central part.
Mhm.
Even if your kids are not getting sick, guys, you bring it back into the community. We live right next to a retirement community, a big one. And to bring this back home, and we've had administrators say, well, they're going to recommend to parents that they should self-quarantine once the kids get home. I know that I know you're grasping at straws. Here's another grasp at the straw. I said, well, what happens when some kid is turned, you find out he's positive? What are you going to do? And he said, well, I think we're going to treat it like head lice. And I said, head lice?
Oh my God.
And I said, what do you mean? I said, well, usually in a classroom, when a kid gets head lice, you tell all the parents in that classroom. I go, that's nice. But this is COVID. This is not head lice. How far? But it just goes to the point that I don't look at these administrators as they're trying their best too, and they're just saying, well, that's the best we can do at the moment with this,
Mhm.
or do you just tell the entire school? I think you should tell everybody, because I think transparency is the only way the only way that you're going to temper fear.
Mhm. And communication. I mean, I don't feel on our side, I don't think parents have been involved in the decision making process. I mean, we haven't been asked. And I think, as you say, there's so many parents, and we should have a say in these decisions as well. It's not like, okay, you decide for us. These are exceptional circumstances. We should have a say as well. And we should be, like you say, if we want to have testing, we should be able to demand that and get it, because these are our kids. We are the ones who are sending our kids to the front line. I mean, it's like this is a war against this virus, and we want to keep everybody safe. And
Yeah. And so parents say, well, what can we do? So there's a couple things. Um, one is to go to your school board and say, hey, what are you doing about this? You can get together in Facebook groups, you can get together in chats, but go after the officials and demand that this be done. And they say, what are you going to do if it doesn't happen? Because the resort right now is, we just need to get back to school no matter what. And I'm saying, no, we need to get back to school in the smartest, health-oriented way possible. And I think having testing is part of that. Something I've done is I started a national petition. I would like to say, let's call it an international petition, because the more parents that get involved in signing this, the better. And it's basically a demand for COVID testing for our kids starting school. And it's a really easy website to remember, protectourkidsnow.net. And that will lead you directly to the petition. It's a change.org petition, but right now we've got over 700 signatures. I'd like to see 10,000. I'd like to see 50,000 signatures, because I think the more signatures that we have, the more people are going to be emboldened to say, wow, I didn't know that there were that many parents that cared. And I think we have an amazing voice, but we are so busy. We are so concerned. We're all these things that we feel like we don't even have a say in the matter. And yes, you do. This is one simple way. I mean, literally, protectuskidsnow.net, boom, takes you right there. 2 minutes later, you're done.
Okay, that's wonderful. Yeah, that's great. A great initiative, and I'm sure. Let's think of it internationally. I mean, I would sign up for it as well. I will put it on my blog for sure for people to sign up.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah.
And so that's definitely a way. And I know that it seems almost futile for parents, but it isn't. I mean, if you take, let's say, even with this petition, let 5 of your friends know. We can all do 5s, right? Mm-hmm. We can get 5 of our friends and say, let's call the school board. Let's contact them. And that 5 and that 5 and that 5, that's 5 more voices than we had just 1 minute ago.
Mm-hmm.
And
and it works. It does work. I mean, we had the same with public transit, which was optional here in BC for wearing masks. And now they're going to make it mandatory, because there was a petition that was run by concerned people. And they're right, absolutely, and they're right. Because on a bus, you can social distance. You're in an enclosed space. You have to wear a mask. So these kind of things just want to be here. Hopeful they do work. And it's
yeah.
Some people are very defeatist, like, yeah, it won't make a difference. My name or my signature won't change anything. Yes, it does. And it's the same with voting, like every vote counts, every signature counts. And we have to keep that in mind, that this is here a choice we have and a responsibility that we have.
I like that, Arsh, very much. And I think too, we actually had a doctor in our state put out a petition, and this was in the early days, in early March, saying we need to shut down, otherwise this thing's going to go nuts. She got so many signatures, it forced the governor's hand, and we shut down because of that petition. Petitions do work, and especially in huge numbers. These guys listen to it. Your leaders will listen to it, and so, create your own local petition, one for Vancouver, one for Canada, or whatever the case may be. I think mandatory masks for schools, come on. I mean, that's a no-brainer.
Yes, it is.
Right? But let's ask the impossible, parents. You have as a parent, your first prerogative, the thing that you do the best is to protect your kids, right? We'll do anything to do. Why wouldn't you ask for this? The most basic fundamental thing is to protect your children, and to protect your children not only from getting the virus, but you protect your community, you protect your country. I mean, you're literally saving everybody by doing these very, very simple things.
Yeah, that's absolutely it. Yeah, and so if you're a patriot, if you love your children, all these things are important, and your action counts. And I think that would be a great way of ending our wonderful interview.
Yes, thank you, Rush.
Thank you so much.
I hope all your listeners stay safe and are well, and we will get through this. And please check out, protectourkidsnow.net, and it'll take you right there. And again, Arash, thank you so much for the
Such a
opportunity.
pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much for taking your time. And
Absolutely.
thank you all for listening.
All right.